She demanded child support, but Billionaire CEO sued for custody. Now he's willing to sacrifice $700 million for his children's future. Rachel Winters stared at the legal document in her trembling hands, the words blurring through her tears. Petition for full custody was emblazoned across the top, followed by allegations that made her stomach turn: financially unstable, unable to provide adequate care, unfit environment for minor children. "He's suing me for custody?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "After 9 years of complete absence, Nathaniel Thompson thinks he can just walk into our lives and take my children?" Her attorney nodded grimly. "He's claiming that with Chloe's medical condition, you're unable to provide the level of care the children need. He's leveraging his financial resources as proof he can offer a better life." Rachel slammed the papers down, fury replacing shock. Better life? Where was his better life? When I was giving birth alone. When I worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. When Chloe cried at night asking why she didn't have a daddy like other kids. She stood up, a fierce determination hardening her features. "Nathaniel Thompson threw me away because I wasn't good enough for his world. Now he thinks he can throw money at a judge and steal my children? I don't care if he's worth billions. Some things aren't for sale." Have you ever wondered what it would take for a mother to stand up against one of the most powerful men in the country? To fight for her children against seemingly impossible odds? This is the story of a woman who dared to demand what her children deserved, only to find herself fighting to keep them all together. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable journey of Rachel Winters, a single mother whose desperate plea for child support turned into a battle that would test the limits of parental love and sacrifice. If you believe that being a parent is about presence, not presence, give this video a like right now. 9 years earlier, Rachel Winters had been a different woman, younger, more trusting, working as an event coordinator at the prestigious Harrington Hotel. At 23, she had dreams of advancing in hospitality management, perhaps even opening her own event planning business someday. Her life was modest but full of possibility. Then Nathaniel Thompson walked into her carefully ordered world. At 33, he was already making waves as the founder and CEO of Thompson Innovations, a tech company on the verge of revolutionary breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. Tall, with penetrating gray eyes and an air of absolute confidence, he commanded attention the moment he entered a room. "Excuse me," he'd said, approaching her desk during a tech conference she was coordinating. "The presentation in the Westbrook room is running behind schedule. Is there any way to extend our booking without disrupting the next event?" Rachel had looked up from her clipboard, meeting those intense gray eyes for the first time. "Let me see what I can do, Mr. Thompson." What began as a simple scheduling adjustment evolved into dinner that evening to discuss the conference schedule, then drinks the following night to review the upcoming speakers, and finally, a proper date with no pretense of business at all. For 6 intoxicating months, Rachel lived in a whirlwind of luxury and passion she'd never imagined possible. Private jets to weekend getaways, exclusive restaurants where chefs prepared meals tableside, a world of privilege that seemed like a dream. "You've awakened something in me," Nathaniel had told her one night as they stood on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights spread before them like jewels. "Something I didn't know was missing." Rachel had believed him, had believed in the future he seemed to be offering. Until the night of the Innovators Gala, when everything shattered. Nathaniel had invited her to an important dinner with potential investors, and Rachel had spent hours preparing, wanting to make him proud. She'd chosen her dress carefully, the most expensive she'd ever owned, though still modest compared to what the other women would be wearing. She'd practiced small talk, read up on the latest tech developments, done everything possible to fit into his world. But as the evening progressed, she noticed Nathaniel growing increasingly tense. When conversation turned to boarding schools and summer homes in the Hamptons, experiences as foreign to Rachel as the moon, she saw something shift in his expression: embarrassment, perhaps, or disappointment. Later that night, in his penthouse, he'd ended things with the same efficiency he used to terminate underperforming employees. "You're wonderful, Rachel," he had said, his voice detached, clinical. "But you don't fit my standard. My world requires a certain type of partner, and you're simply not it." I can't be seen with someone of your background. The words had cut deeper than any physical wound. My background, she'd echoed, disbelieving. You mean because I didn't grow up with a silver spoon? Because I had to work for everything I have. It's not personal, he'd replied, as if that somehow softened the blow. It's simply reality. We come from different worlds, and I need someone who understands mine inherently. He'd left her apartment that night, never to return, never knowing that 2 weeks later, Rachel would stare at a positive pregnancy test, her world crumbling around her. She never told him. Pride, hurt, and a bone-deep certainty that Nathaniel Thompson would either demand she terminate the pregnancy or try to take the child from her, neither option was acceptable. So she'd faced morning sickness alone, attended doctor's appointments alone, and discovered during an ultrasound that she was carrying not one child, but two. Twins. The technician had announced cheerfully, pointing to the monitor. See? Here and here. Rachel had stared at the 2 tiny heartbeats flickering on the screen and made a silent promise. These children would never feel unwanted. They would never know their father had deemed their mother unworthy. The twins were born on a rainy April morning, Chloe arriving first, with a powerful cry that seemed to announce her presence to the world, followed 7 minutes later by Tyler, quieter but with the same determined expression. They had their father's gray eyes and dark hair, but Rachel saw herself in their smiles, in the stubborn set of their tiny chins. It's just us now, she'd whispered to them in the hospital room. No family present to share the moment. But I promise you it will be enough. For 9 years, Rachel kept that promise. She left her job at the Harrington to take a position with more regular hours, sacrificing career advancement for time with her children. She moved to a smaller apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood to save on rent. She clipped coupons, shopped sales, and learned to stretch every dollar to its breaking point. But she also created a home filled with love and laughter. She read to the twins every night, helped with homework, cheered at soccer games, and celebrated every milestone with homemade cakes and small but thoughtful gifts. When they asked about their father, she told them only that he lived far away and couldn't be with them, a partial truth that spared them the pain of knowing they'd been rejected before they were even born. Why doesn't he visit? Tyler had asked once, around their 7th birthday. His gray eyes, so like Nathaniel's, serious and searching. Sometimes adults make complicated choices, Rachel had answered carefully. But it doesn't mean you're not loved. You have me, and I have enough love for 2 parents. Life settled into a challenging but manageable routine until 3 months ago, when 8-year-old Chloe began complaining of persistent fatigue and unusual bruising. The diagnosis had come like a thunderbolt on a clear day: leukemia. With proper treatment, the prognosis is good, the oncologist had assured Rachel. But it will be an intensive protocol: chemotherapy, possibly radiation, regular hospital stays. What the doctor didn't say, but what Rachel quickly learned, was that even with insurance, the costs would be astronomical. Co-pays, medications not fully covered, parking at the hospital, meals during long treatment days, lost wages from taking time off work. The expenses mounted with terrifying speed. 3 months into Chloe's treatment, Rachel sat at her kitchen table surrounded by bills marked past due and final notice. She had maxed out her credit cards, drained her modest savings, even sold her car and started taking the bus. Still, it wasn't enough. Chloe needed specialized treatment that their insurance deemed experimental, which meant it wasn't covered at all. Through the partially open bedroom door, Rachel could see Tyler sitting beside his sister's bed, reading to her from her favorite book. Chloe's once bouncy curls were gone, her skin pale against the pillows, but her smile as she listened to her brother was as bright as ever. And the princess told the dragon, "I don't need rescuing. I can save myself." Tyler read, his small finger tracing the words carefully. Chloe smiled weakly. Just like Mom. The words pierced Rachel's heart. She had always wanted to be their hero, to prove they didn't need anyone else. But heroes weren't supposed to fail, and right now, failure was staring her in the face with merciless clarity. Her gaze fell on her phone, and the number she'd tracked down after weeks of discreet inquiries: Nathaniel Thompson. the name she hadn't spoken aloud in 9 years. Pride had sustained her all this time, but pride wouldn't save Chloe. Pride wouldn't secure Tyler's future. Sometimes love meant swallowing that pride, even when it felt like broken glass in your throat. With trembling fingers, Rachel picked up her phone. One press and she would shatter the wall she had built between her children and the man who had deemed her unworthy. One press and she would be asking for help from the person who had wounded her most deeply. "Mom!" Tyler stood in the doorway, his serious eyes watching her carefully. Chloe fell asleep. She said her head hurts again. Rachel quickly set the phone down. "I'll check on her, sweetheart. Why don't you get ready for bed too?" After tucking both children in, Rachel returned to the kitchen table, to the bills and the phone and the decision she could no longer avoid. With a deep breath, she pressed call. 3 rings. Then a voice she hadn't heard in nearly a decade, deeper perhaps, but unmistakable. "Thompson speaking." Rachel closed her eyes, steadying herself. "Nathaniel, it's Rachel Winters." The silence that followed stretched like an eternity, heavy with unspoken history. "Rachel." His voice betrayed nothing. "This is unexpected. I wouldn't call if it wasn't important." She forced strength into her voice. "We need to talk. In person." Another pause. "I'm extremely busy. Perhaps you could." "It's about your children, Nathaniel. Your twins. Chloe and Tyler." The sharp intake of breath on the other end told her the words had landed with the impact she intended. "I don't have." "You do?" She cut him off. "They're 8 years old. And one of them is very sick. If you've ever had to swallow your pride for the sake of someone you love, hit that like button. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that force us to face our past." Stay with me as we discover what happens when Rachel confronts the man who broke her heart, now holding her children's future in his hands. 2 days later, Rachel sat in an upscale cafe downtown, far from her neighborhood, waiting. She had dressed carefully in her best clothes, a navy dress she wore for job interviews, sensible heels that didn't betray how rarely she wore them. The twins were with her neighbor, Mrs. Castillo, who had become like family over the years. When Nathaniel walked in, the years fell away. At 47, he was more distinguished than handsome now, silver threading through his dark hair, lines etched around his eyes speaking of stress rather than laughter. Success had shaped him physically. The tailored suit, the confident stride, the way other patrons instinctively glanced his way, recognizing power even if they didn't recognize the man. His eyes found her immediately, a flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossing his features before his expression settled into careful neutrality. "Rachel." He sat across from her, not offering a handshake or any other greeting. "Thank you for coming." She kept her voice steady, professional. "You mentioned children." He spoke the word as if testing unfamiliar territory. "I assume you have proof of this claim?" Rachel opened her purse and placed 2 photographs on the table. The first showed the twins on their last birthday, before Chloe's diagnosis. Both smiling, arms around each other, Chloe's curls wild in the wind, Tyler's serious eyes softened by his smile. The second was more recent. Chloe in her hospital bed, Tyler beside her, holding her hand as she slept. Nathaniel stared at the images, his composure cracking slightly. The resemblance was undeniable. Tyler had his eyes, his jawline. Chloe, even in illness, had his smile. "Why now?" he finally asked, looking up. "It's been 9 years, Rachel finished. 9 years during which I never asked you for anything. 9 years of doctor's appointments, school plays, nightmares, and first steps that you missed by choice. I didn't know," he said, his voice hardening defensively. "You made it clear I wasn't good enough for your world. Would knowing about them have changed that?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Chloe has leukemia," Rachel continued, her voice softening despite herself. "The treatment she needs isn't fully covered by insurance. I've exhausted every resource I have." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "So this is about money. This is about your daughter's life," Rachel corrected, heat rising in her cheeks. "And yes, it's about child support, support you should have been providing all along. But it's also about them knowing their father, if you're willing to be that for them. Nathaniel leaned back, studying her with the calculating gaze of a man accustomed to evaluating assets and liabilities. What exactly are you asking for? Financial support for their medical needs and education, and your presence in their lives, but only if you're committed. They've never had a father. I won't let them experience having one only to lose him when it becomes inconvenient. Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression. A hardening, a decision forming behind those familiar eyes that had once looked at her with desire, then dismissal, and now something colder. I'll have my lawyer contact you, he said, standing abruptly. We'll need DNA tests, of course. Of course, Rachel echoed, disappointment washing over her despite having expected nothing more. As Nathaniel turned to leave, he paused, looking back at the photographs still on the table. With a hesitation that betrayed his composure, he asked, "What are they like?" Rachel considered ignoring the question, punishing him with silence as he had punished her with absence. But she thought of Chloe and Tyler, of the pieces of themselves they might someday want him to know. Tyler is thoughtful, serious beyond his years. He loves science and asks questions about everything. Chloe is brave and creative. She writes stories about adventures she wants to have when she's better. Rachel swallowed hard. They're extraordinary, Nathaniel, and they deserved better than a father who never knew they existed. Something flickered across his face. Regret, perhaps, or the first crack in a wall built of pride and ambition. I'll be in touch, he said, and walked away, leaving Rachel alone with 2 photographs and the weight of a decision that would forever alter the careful world she had built for her children. 3 days passed with no word from Nathaniel. Rachel tried to focus on the routine of daily life, taking Chloe to her treatments, helping Tyler with homework, working extra hours when she could find someone to watch the children. But the weight of uncertainty hung over her like a storm cloud. On the 4th day, as she was preparing dinner, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Ms. Winters? This is Lawrence Blackwell, attorney for Nathaniel Thompson. Rachel's heart sank. Of course Nathaniel wouldn't call himself. Yes, Mr. Blackwell. I'm calling to inform you that we've filed a petition for full custody of the minor children, Chloe and Tyler Thompson. The wooden spoon Rachel had been holding clattered to the floor. What did you say? Mr. Thompson is seeking full custody of his children. Given Ms. Chloe's medical condition and your financial circumstances, we believe the court will agree that the children's best interests would be served by living with their father, who can provide superior medical care, educational opportunities, and financial stability. This is absurd, Rachel managed, her voice shaking. He didn't even know they existed until 4 days ago. He's never spent a single minute as their father. The courts generally favor biological parents who demonstrate the ability and desire to provide for their children, Blackwell replied smoothly. Mr. Thompson's resources will ensure the children want for nothing, particularly regarding Ms. Chloe's medical treatment. And what about emotional stability? The trauma of being separated from the only parent they've ever known? Does your client care about that? Mr. Thompson is prepared to provide whatever psychological support the children require during the transition. You'll be receiving the formal documents tomorrow. I suggest you retain counsel immediately. After the call ended, Rachel stood frozen in her kitchen, the half-prepared dinner forgotten. This couldn't be happening. She had reached out for help, for the support her children deserved, and instead, Nathaniel was trying to take them away completely. Mom! Tyler appeared in the doorway, his expression concerned. Are you okay? You look scared. Rachel forced a smile, quickly wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. How's your sister? She's watching that science show we recorded. She says her head doesn't hurt as much today. That's good news. Rachel pulled him into a hug, holding him tighter and longer than usual, breathing in the scent of his hair, memorizing the feel of his small body against hers. Mom, you're squishing me, he protested, though he didn't pull away. Sorry, she murmured, releasing him reluctantly. I just love you so much. That night, After the twins were asleep, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad, making desperate calculations. She had no savings left to hire a decent attorney. Her credit was maxed out from Chloe's medical bills. How could she possibly fight a billionaire in court? The next morning, the custody papers arrived as promised. Reading through them, Rachel felt physically ill. Nathaniel's petition painted her as a struggling single mother unable to provide adequately for her children, particularly Chloe with her medical needs. It emphasized his vast resources, the private medical care he could provide, the elite schools the children could attend, the trust funds he would establish for their futures. What it didn't mention was love or stability, or the fact that he had been completely absent for their entire lives. With shaking hands, Rachel called the only attorney she could afford, a friend from her community college days who now worked primarily in real estate law but owed her a favor. "He can't just walk in and take them," Melissa assured her after reviewing the documents. "Courts don't automatically favor wealth over established parental relationships. But Rachel, I have to be honest, this will be an uphill battle. Thompson has resources we can't match. What about the fact that he's never been in their lives? That counts for something, right?" "It does, but he'll argue he didn't know about them. And courts generally want to encourage fathers to step up, even belatedly. So what do? We fight. We emphasize your bond with the children, their stability in their current environment, the potential trauma of separation. And we push for a compromise, perhaps joint custody with primary physical custody remaining with you." It wasn't the reassurance Rachel had hoped for, but it was something. A strategy. A way forward. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, the court ordered a meeting between the children and their father, supervised by a court-appointed social worker. Telling the twins about Nathaniel was one of the hardest things Rachel had ever done. She sat them down in their small living room, choosing her words carefully. "Remember how I've always told you that your father lives far away and can't be with us?" They nodded, Tyler's expression serious, Chloe's curious despite her fatigue. "Well, that wasn't entirely true. Your father didn't know about you until recently. His name is Nathaniel Thompson, and he wants to meet you." "He didn't know about us?" Tyler asked, his analytical mind immediately focusing on the logical inconsistency. "How could he not know?" Rachel took a deep breath. "When I found out I was pregnant with you both, your father and I had already separated. I made a choice not to tell him." "Why?" Chloe's question was simple but cut to the heart of everything. "Because I was hurt, and proud, and afraid," Rachel admitted. "I was wrong not to tell him, even though I thought I was protecting you both. And now he wants to see us?" Tyler pressed. "After all this time?" "Yes, and there's something else you should know. Your father is wealthy, very wealthy. He owns a big technology company and has a lot of resources that we don't have." "Is that why you told him about us now?" Chloe asked, her eyes too knowing for an 8-year-old. "Because of my hospital bills?" Rachel's heart broke at her daughter's perception. "Partly, yes. The treatments you need are expensive, and I thought he should help with that. But also because you deserve to know your father, and he deserves to know you, if he's willing to be a real part of your lives." "Will we have to live with him?" Tyler asked, fear edging into his voice. Rachel wanted to promise they wouldn't, to assure them nothing would change. But she couldn't lie to them again. "I don't know, sweetheart. Your father thinks you might be better off with him because he can provide things I can't. But I'm going to fight to keep our family together. I promise you that." The meeting with Nathaniel was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at a neutral location, a private room at the children's hospital where Chloe received her treatments. Rachel dressed the twins in their best clothes, combed Chloe's wispy regrowth of hair, and tried to project a calm she didn't feel. "Remember," she told them as they waited, "you don't have to do or say anything you're not comfortable with. Ms. Jenkins will be there the whole time, and I'll be right outside." When Nathaniel arrived, Rachel's breath caught at the sight of him with the twins. The resemblance was even more striking in person. Tyler with his father's thoughtful gaze, Chloe with his determined chin. For a moment, she glimpsed the family they might have been, in another life where Nathaniel had made different choices. "Hello," he said to the children, his usual confidence faltering slightly. "I'm Nathaniel, your father." Tyler stepped slightly in front of his sister, protective even at 8. "I'm Tyler. This is Chloe." "I know." Nathaniel's voice softened. "Your mother told me about you. I've been looking forward to meeting you both." "Where have you been all this time?" Chloe asked, direct as always despite her frail appearance. Nathaniel glanced at the social worker, then back at the children. "I didn't know about you until very recently. If I had known, things would have been different." "Different how?" Tyler pressed. "I would have been part of your lives. I would have been there for birthdays and school events. I would have." He trailed off, perhaps realizing the futility of rewriting a past that couldn't be changed. "Mom says you're rich," Chloe said, changing the subject with a child's bluntness. "Is that why you want us to live with you? Because you can buy us things?" Rachel, watching through the observation window, held her breath at her daughter's perceptiveness. "No," Nathaniel replied after a moment. "I want you to live with me because you're my children, and because I can give you opportunities and experiences that will benefit you throughout your lives." "We already have a home," Tyler said firmly. "With Mom." "I understand that, and I'm not trying to take your mother away from you. But there are practical considerations, Chloe's medical care, for instance. I can provide access to the best specialists, treatments that might not be available to you otherwise." The conversation continued, awkward and stilted at times, more natural at others. Rachel watched as Nathaniel gradually relaxed, his corporate persona softening as he engaged with the children. He seemed genuinely interested in their lives, asking about school, friends, hobbies, and the twins, initially wary, began to respond to his attention. When Chloe mentioned her love of writing stories, Nathaniel's face lit up. "I used to write when I was your age. Adventure stories mostly, about explorers discovering new worlds." "Really?" Chloe's eyes widened. "I write about a girl who can talk to animals, and they help her solve mysteries." "That sounds fascinating. I'd love to read one sometime." The moment of connection was small but significant. Rachel felt a complicated mix of emotions watching it unfold. Relief that the meeting was going well, fear of what it might mean for her custody case, and a deep, unexpected sadness for what might have been if Nathaniel had been able to see beyond her background 9 years ago. After an hour, the social worker signaled that the meeting was concluding. As Nathaniel prepared to leave, he hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. "I brought something for each of you," he said, producing 2 small boxes. "Just a small gift to mark our first meeting." Tyler received a sophisticated digital watch with multiple scientific functions. Chloe's box contained a delicate silver bracelet with a pen-shaped charm. "For my fellow writer," Nathaniel explained. The gifts were thoughtful, personal in a way Rachel hadn't expected. As the twins thanked him with cautious politeness, she saw something change in Nathaniel's expression. A softening, a realization perhaps of what he had missed all these years. When he emerged from the meeting room, his eyes met Rachel's with an intensity that took her by surprise. "They're remarkable," he said quietly. "You've done an extraordinary job with them." Before she could respond, his expression hardened again. "But they deserve more than a cramped apartment and public schools. They deserve every advantage I can give them." "What they deserve is stability and love," Rachel countered. "Not to be uprooted from the only home they've ever known because you've suddenly decided to be a father after 9 years of absence." "This isn't productive," he said, glancing at the social worker who was discreetly taking notes nearby. "My attorney will be in touch about the next steps." As he walked away, Rachel felt the full weight of what she was up against. Nathaniel Thompson had decided he wanted his children, and he had the resources to wage a legal battle she couldn't possibly match. But she had one thing he didn't: 9 years of love, sacrifice, and unwavering presence in their lives. If you've ever had to fight for what matters most against seemingly impossible odds, hit that like button. In our next segment, we'll see how this custody battle escalates as Nathaniel makes a shocking offer that will test Rachel's resolve and force her to question what's truly best for her children. The weeks following the initial meeting with Nathaniel became a blur of legal consultations, court appearances, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for the twins. Rachel's attorney, Melissa, worked tirelessly despite being outmatched by Nathaniel's legal team, a squadron of polished professionals from one of the country's most prestigious firms. They filed a motion for temporary custody during the proceedings, Melissa explained during a hurried meeting between Rachel's shifts at work. They're arguing that Chloe's medical needs constitute an emergency situation that requires immediate intervention. That's absurd, Rachel protested. She's getting excellent care. Her doctors are some of the best in the city. I know that and will present evidence to that effect. But Nathaniel's team has lined up specialists from Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic who are prepared to testify that she could be receiving more comprehensive treatment. Rachel felt the walls closing in. How do we fight this? We focus on stability and emotional well-being. We emphasize that removing Chloe from her home environment during treatment could cause psychological trauma that would impede her recovery. It was a sound strategy, but Rachel could see the concern in Melissa's eyes. They were fighting against not just Nathaniel's money, but the seductive promise of what that money could provide: experimental treatments, world-renowned specialists, medical resources beyond what Rachel could ever hope to access. The court ordered a home study, sending a social worker to evaluate Rachel's apartment. She cleaned frantically, making sure every surface gleamed, that the refrigerator was fully stocked, that the twins' homework was neatly organized on the small desk they shared. But she couldn't hide the fundamental truth. Their home was modest, their resources limited. The social worker kept writing things down, Rachel told Melissa afterward. Every time she looked at the bathroom we all share, or noticed the patch on the couch, or saw how small the twins' bedroom is, she made another note. That's her job, Melissa reassured her. But she'll also note the family photos everywhere, the art projects displayed on the walls, the well-worn books that show how much you read to them. Home isn't about square footage, Rachel. But in a custody battle against a billionaire, Rachel feared that material considerations would inevitably overshadow the less tangible aspects of parenting. Meanwhile, Nathaniel continued his court-approved visits with the twins, no longer supervised after the initial meetings went well. He took them to museums, science centers, a private screening of a movie Chloe had been wanting to see. He arranged for a tutor to help Tyler with math, his most challenging subject. He brought specialists to consult on Chloe's treatment, with Rachel's reluctant permission. The twins returned from these outings with wide eyes and excited stories about the wonders their father had shown them. Rachel listened with a smile frozen on her face, her heart breaking a little more each time. Dad says when I'm better we can go to Disney World, Chloe announced after one visit. He says we can stay in the castle. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, Rachel managed, smoothing her daughter's scarf, a cashmere one that had replaced the knitted hat Rachel had made her, now tucked away in a drawer. And he's going to take me to space camp next summer, Tyler added. Real astronauts teach you there. Rachel nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. How could she compete with Disney castles and space camp? With private tutors and world-class medical specialists? With all the advantages Nathaniel's wealth could provide? The answer came to her in the quiet hours of night, as she sat beside Chloe's bed during a particularly rough bout of nausea from her treatment. Her daughter had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from being sick, her small hand still clutching Rachel's. I'm here, Rachel had whispered, stroking Chloe's forehead. I'm always here. And that was it, the one thing she could offer that Nathaniel couldn't. Constancy, presence, the unwavering commitment to be there, not just for the exciting moments and special occasions, but for the hard nights, the scary days, the ordinary moments that made up a life. The next morning, Rachel called Melissa with a new approach. I want to propose joint custody, she said, with primary physical custody remaining with me, but liberal visitation for Nathaniel. And I want to ask for his financial support for their education and Chloe's medical care, without giving up my role as their primary caregiver. That's actually a reasonable compromise, Melissa said, sounding relieved. It acknowledges his parental rights while preserving the stability of their current living situation. I'll draft a proposal immediately. Nathaniel's response came swiftly and unequivocally. Rejection. Mr. Thompson is not interested in a joint custody arrangement, Lawrence Blackwell informed them during a pre-trial conference. He believes the children's best interests require a complete change in their living situation, with generous visitation rights for Ms. Winters. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had seen countless custody battles, frowned at this. Mr. Blackwell, your client has been absent from these children's lives for 8 years. The court generally favors stability and continuity in custody determinations. Your Honor, my client was unaware of the children's existence until recently. Once informed, he immediately took steps to assume his parental responsibilities. Furthermore, the children's current living situation is demonstrably inadequate, particularly given Ms. Chloe's medical needs. My client has provided excellent care for both children since birth, Melissa countered. Chloe's doctors will testify that her treatment plan is appropriate and effective. The only inadequacy Mr. Thompson can point to is financial, and that could be remedied through proper child support rather than a disruptive change in custody. The judge nodded thoughtfully. I'm inclined to agree that financial considerations alone are insufficient grounds for a change in custody. However, I am concerned about ensuring the best possible medical care for the child. I'll hear testimony from the medical experts before making any determination. It was a small victory, but Rachel knew the battle was far from over. Nathaniel Thompson didn't become a billionaire by accepting defeat easily. The next day, as Rachel was leaving the hospital after one of Chloe's treatments, she found Nathaniel waiting by her car. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Not through lawyers. Just us." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "There's a coffee shop around the corner." They sat at a table in the back, two people who had once shared the most intimate connection, now separated by years of absence and recent animosity. "This legal battle isn't good for anyone," Nathaniel began, his voice lower and less commanding than in court. "Especially not for Chloe and Tyler." "I agree," Rachel said cautiously. "That's why I proposed joint custody, which doesn't address the fundamental issue. They need resources I can provide. Stability isn't just about emotional consistency, Rachel. It's about knowing your future is secure, that you'll have every opportunity to thrive. And you think they can only have that with you? That the love and security I've given them for 8 years counts for nothing against your bank account?" Nathaniel's expression hardened. "That's not what I'm saying. But be realistic, you're working 2 jobs, living paycheck to paycheck. Chloe's treatment alone is draining what little resources you have. How will you pay for college? What happens if her condition worsens and requires more intensive care?" The questions hit Rachel like physical blows because they were the same ones that kept her awake at night. "I would find a way," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You shouldn't have to find a way when I can provide everything they need without struggle." Nathaniel leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "I have a proposal, not a legal one, just between us." Rachel waited, wary. "I'm prepared to place $700 million in an irrevocable trust for Chloe and Tyler. The funds would cover all medical expenses, education through graduate school if they choose, and provide them financial security for life." Rachel's breath caught. The amount was staggering, beyond anything she had imagined even Nathaniel might offer. "In exchange for what?" she asked, though she already knew. "Full custody. You would have liberal visitation, of course. Weekends, holidays, summer vacations. But they would live with me, attend schools I select, receive the medical care I arrange. You're trying to buy our children. I'm trying to give them the future they deserve." Nathaniel's voice softened slightly. "Rachel, you've done an amazing job raising them alone. I can see that. They're incredible kids, smart, kind, resilient. That's your influence and I respect it. But I can offer them opportunities you simply can't. And you think that's worth separating them from the only parent they've ever known? From the home where they've grown up? From their friends and school and everything familiar? I think $700 million and access to the best of everything is worth some adjustment period, yes." Nathaniel sat back, studying her. Think about it. Not just from your perspective, but from theirs. What would you want if you were Chloe or Tyler? The question lingered in Rachel's mind long after they parted. What would she want for her children, if she could set aside her own feelings? The answer wasn't as clear as she wished it to be. That evening, she sat with the twins in their small living room, watching them do homework. Tyler was focused intently on a science project, while Chloe sketched characters for a story she was writing. They seemed content, normal, despite the upheaval of recent weeks and Chloe's ongoing treatments. "Mom!" Chloe looked up from her drawing. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. If I went to live with Dad, would you be sad?" The question knocked the breath from Rachel's lungs. "Why do you ask that?" Chloe shrugged, her thin shoulders rising and falling beneath her pajama top. "Dad said we could have our own rooms at his house, and there's a pool and a movie theater room. And he said I could have a special doctor who would come to the house instead of me going to the hospital all the time." Tyler looked up from his project, his expression troubled. "He said we'd still see you a lot, but we'd live with him." Rachel struggled to keep her voice steady. "And how do you feel about that idea?" The twins exchanged a glance, one of those silent communications that had always fascinated Rachel. "I don't know," Chloe admitted. "His house is really nice, and he says he can get me into the special treatment program that might make me better faster. But it wouldn't be home," Tyler added quietly. "And you wouldn't be there all the time." Rachel moved to sit between them on the couch, putting an arm around each child. "Listen to me, both of you. I want you to be happy and healthy more than anything in the world. Whatever happens with this custody situation, that will never change. Your father wants what's best for you too, in his way. But what's going to happen?" Tyler pressed, always needing concrete answers. "I don't know yet," Rachel admitted. "The judge will decide what arrangement is best for you both. But I promise you this, no matter where you live, no matter what the court decides, I will always, always be your mother. Nothing can change that." The twins leaned against her, seeking the comfort they'd always found in her embrace. Rachel held them close, memorizing the feel of them, the scent of their hair, the weight of their small bodies against hers. If the worst happened, if Nathaniel's wealth and influence prevailed in court, she would need these memories to sustain her. The next day brought another development. Nathaniel's legal team filed a motion requesting that the children's preferences be considered in the custody determination. "It's a strategic move," Melissa explained. "He's been showering them with gifts and promises. He thinks they'll choose him." Would the court really ask them to choose? Rachel was horrified at the thought of putting that burden on her children. Not directly, no. But the judge might appoint a guardian ad litem to interview them and represent their interests in court. Their preferences would be one factor among many. They're 8 years old. They can be influenced by promises of swimming pools and movie rooms. They don't understand the long-term implications. "I know," Melissa agreed grimly. "That's exactly what Nathaniel is counting on." The court granted the motion, appointing a guardian ad litem named Patricia Hendricks to represent the twins' interests. Ms. Hendricks was a no-nonsense former family court judge who now specialized in advocating for children in high-conflict custody cases. She interviewed the twins separately, then together, then with each parent. She visited both homes, Rachel's modest apartment and Nathaniel's sprawling mansion. She spoke with teachers, doctors, neighbors, anyone who had significant contact with the children. When she finally delivered her report to the court, both Rachel and Nathaniel were present, sitting on opposite sides of the courtroom with their respective legal teams. After thorough evaluation, Ms. Hendricks began, "I find that both Chloe and Tyler Thompson are remarkably well-adjusted children despite their mother's financial limitations and Chloe's medical challenges. They demonstrate strong attachment to their mother, who has provided consistent emotional support and stability throughout their lives." Rachel felt a surge of hope at these words. They have also developed a positive, if new, relationship with their father over recent weeks. They express appreciation for the experiences and opportunities he has provided, and curiosity about further involvement with him. Nathaniel nodded slightly, his expression confident. When asked about their preferences regarding living arrangements, both children expressed conflicted feelings. They recognized the material advantages their father offers, particularly regarding Chloe's medical care. However, they also expressed significant anxiety about separation from their mother and the home environment they know. Ms. Hendricks paused, looking directly at the judge. In my professional opinion, the children's best interest would be served by a joint custody arrangement with primary physical custody remaining with Ms. Winters, who has been their consistent caregiver since birth. Mr. Thompson should have substantial visitation rights and significant input on major decisions regarding education and medical care. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson should provide financial support commensurate with his resources to ensure the children's needs are fully met without necessitating a disruptive change in their primary residence. Rachel exhaled slowly, tears of relief stinging her eyes. The guardian's recommendation aligned perfectly with what she believed was truly best for the twins. But across the courtroom, Nathaniel's expression had darkened. He leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. Lawrence Blackwell nodded, then rose to address the court. Your Honor, in light of Ms. Hendricks' report, my client would like to present new evidence regarding his ability to provide for the children's well-being. We request a brief recess to prepare this presentation. The judge frowned but granted a 15-minute recess. As the courtroom emptied, Rachel turned to Melissa. What do you think they're planning? I'm not sure, Melissa admitted. But whatever it is, it's a last-ditch effort. The guardian's recommendation carries significant weight with the court. When proceedings resumed, Nathaniel himself took the stand, something he had not done previously in the case. Under oath, he addressed the court directly. Your Honor, I've listened to Ms. Hendricks' report, and I respect her evaluation. But there's something I need to make clear about my intentions for my children. He paused, his gaze finding Rachel's across the courtroom. When I first learned about Chloe and Tyler, I reacted as a businessman. I saw a problem to solve, assets to acquire, a situation to control. I approached fatherhood the same way I've approached every challenge in my life, with resources, strategy, and determination to win. The courtroom was utterly silent, all eyes on Nathaniel as he continued. But over these past weeks, something has changed. I've gotten to know my children, not as extensions of myself or investments in my legacy, but as remarkable individuals. I've seen Chloe's creativity and courage as she faces her illness. I've witnessed Tyler's intelligence and protective nature toward his sister. And I've been forced to acknowledge something I didn't expect. He took a deep breath. Rachel Winters has been an extraordinary mother. Despite limited resources, despite having to do it all alone, she has raised children any parent would be proud of. The bond they share is something money can't buy and courts can't transfer. Rachel stared at him in disbelief, unable to process this unexpected turn. A murmur ran through the courtroom as Nathaniel Thompson stood before the judge, his usual commanding presence softened by something unfamiliar humility. I still believe I can offer my children advantages their mother cannot, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hushed room. But I've come to understand that those advantages mean little if they come at the cost of the security and love they've always known. He turned to face the judge directly. Your Honor, I'm amending my petition. I no longer seek full custody, but propose joint custody with primary physical custody remaining with their mother. I'm placing $700 million in an irrevocable trust for my children's future, not as a bargaining chip, but as my commitment to their well-being. The judge leaned forward, studying him carefully. Mr. Thompson, this is a significant change. Are you certain this is what you want? I am. I've realized that being a father isn't about ownership or control. It's about putting my children's needs above my own desires. Rachel couldn't believe what she was hearing. After weeks of bitter legal battles, Nathaniel was conceding and offering financial security beyond anything she could have imagined. Ms. Winters, your response? The judge asked. Rachel stood slowly. I need to understand exactly what this means. Joint legal custody, but the children continue living with me? Yes, Nathaniel confirmed. You remain their primary caregiver. I would have regular visitation and input on major decisions. The trust ensures financial considerations never limit their opportunities. And if Chloe's condition worsens, the trust covers any medical needs no matter how extensive. And I would be there, Rachel, not to take over, but to support you both. I accept, she said finally, provided all details are clearly outlined in a formal agreement. The judge nodded. This arrangement appears to serve the children's best interests. We'll reconvene tomorrow to finalize the agreement. As court adjourned, Nathaniel approached Rachel. May I speak with you privately? In a small conference room, they stood in silence, two people who had once shared everything, then nothing, now bound together again through their children. Why the change of heart? Rachel finally asked. Nathaniel ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. Last night, Chloe asked me to read to her. She showed me her book from home, worn, pages soft from handling. She knew exactly where you had left off and how you do different voices for each character. He paused, emotion visible on his usually controlled features. I realized you've been there for every moment of their lives. You've created rituals and memories that shaped who they are. I was about to tear them away from that because I thought my money made me the better parent. You wanted to be their father, Rachel said softly. I did. I do. But I was trying to buy their childhood instead of earning my place in it. He met her gaze directly. I'm sorry, Rachel. Not just for the custody battle, but for 9 years ago. For not seeing your worth beyond our different backgrounds. The unexpected apology loosened something that had been knotted inside Rachel for years. Thank you for saying that. I can't make up for lost time, but I want to be part of their lives going forward, in whatever way is best for them. They need their father, Rachel acknowledged. They always have, and now they'll have both of us. The next day, the agreement was finalized. Rachel would retain primary custody, with Nathaniel having regular visitation. The financial provisions included the $700 million trust and immediate support, allowing Rachel to move to a better apartment and reduce her work hours during Chloe's treatments. Most importantly, Nathaniel arranged for Chloe to join a groundbreaking treatment program that offered not just remission but a potential cure. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered. When asked why he committed such a significant portion of his fortune, Nathaniel's expression softened. Because some things are more valuable than money. I missed 8 years of my children's lives, years I can never get back. What's $700 million compared to the chance to be their father going forward? 6 months later, Rachel watched as Nathaniel pushed Chloe on a swing, her laughter filling the air. Tyler demonstrated his science project to his father's genuinely interested gaze. Chloe's health had improved dramatically, her hair growing back, her energy returning. The transition hadn't been without challenges, but watching them now, Rachel felt a peace she hadn't expected. The twins had gained not just financial security, but a father learning to be present in their lives. And she had gained a partner in raising 2 remarkable children. Ice cream, Nathaniel called, spotting a vendor. The twins raced toward him, their energy a testament to how far they'd come from those hospital days. For you, he said, offering Rachel a cone of her favorite flavor from years ago. You remembered, she said, surprised. I remember more than you might think. His expression grew thoughtful as he watched the twins. I was a fool 9 years ago, Rachel. I threw away something precious because I couldn't see past superficial differences. We were different people then, she acknowledged. You were building an empire. I was finding my way. And now we're parents. That changes everything. Nathaniel nodded. The best $700 million I've ever spent. Rachel laughed softly. It was never about the money. I know that now, he replied. They're extraordinary children because they have an extraordinary mother. They weren't a couple and never would be again. But they were finding their way to something new, a partnership built on their shared love for Chloe and Tyler. 1 year later, Rachel stood in the doorway of Chloe's hospital room, watching Nathaniel read to their daughter. The final treatment had been completed that morning, with doctors optimistic about declaring her cancer-free. I'm not tired, Chloe insisted through a yawn. Keep reading, Dad. The words still brought a smile to Nathaniel's face. He had earned the title over the past year, showing up consistently not just for fun outings, but for doctor's appointments, school conferences, and ordinary evenings helping with homework. We'll finish tomorrow, he promised. Rest now. As Chloe drifted off, Nathaniel joined Rachel in the hallway. The doctor says we can take her home tomorrow. The latest results are the best they've been. A year ago, I wasn't sure we'd ever reach this point, Rachel said, emotion in her voice. When you called me that day, I thought you were just after my money, Nathaniel admitted. I couldn't imagine any other reason you'd break 9 years of silence. I was after your money, Rachel smiled, but only because it could give Chloe what she needed. What I never expected was that you would give them something more valuable, yourself. They changed me, he said, glancing at their sleeping children. Made me see what really matters. All those years building wealth, none of it means anything compared to being their father. The $700 million didn't hurt, Rachel teased. He laughed softly. Best investment I ever made. But if you just asked for child support that first day, I probably would have written a check and kept my distance. Filing for custody was my way of maintaining control. And now I understand that being a parent isn't about control. It's about showing up, being present, putting someone else's needs before your own. He met her gaze. You taught me that, Rachel. You've been doing it for 9 years. The twins had gained something neither parent could have provided alone. Rachel's unwavering presence combined with Nathaniel's resources, all wrapped in the love of two parents who had found a way to put their children first. As they settled into chairs for the night, Rachel reflected on their journey. From that desperate phone call to this moment of hope, from bitter adversaries to respectful co-parents, from a mother fighting alone to a family united by love. Sometimes the hardest battles led to the most unexpected blessings. And sometimes, what began as a desperate plea for child support could transform into something far more valuable, a second chance to be the family their children deserved. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. Remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the love we give and the difference we make in our children's lives.